Okay, welcome to the Committee of the Whole meeting with the Municipality of South Dundas' team and visitors and members. I'd like to start off the meeting by welcoming our new CAO, Tim Mills, who is here with us for his first meeting. So welcome, Tim. Call the meeting to order. I have a motion. Let it be resolved that the May 31st, 2023 Committee of the Whole be opened at 6 p.m. Moved by Councillor Smith, seconded by Deputy Mayor St. Pierre. All in favor? Carried. Confirmation of the agenda. Are there any errors, omissions, or amendments to the agenda? Seeing none, let it be resolved that Council of the Municipality of South Dundas approve the agenda as presented. Moved by Councillor Ward, seconded by Councillor Smith. All in favor? Carried. Thank you very much. Is there any disclosure of pecuniary interest and the general nature thereof? Seeing none, we'll move to number 4, adoption of minutes. So this is the first Committee of the Whole meeting for this council, so we do not have any previous minutes to approve. Item 5A, sidewalk replacement program. We have Director Jeff Hyman from the Roads Department here to kick us off with his presentation information. Thanks, Jeff, for being here.
Thank you, Mayor and Council. So in front of you is a KIR. Within this KIR, we're just trying to create a 5-year roadmap, if you may say, put it that way, for where we're going to go with our sidewalk replacement program. Back in 2019, we created through the old council a 6-year program which identified our priority sidewalks that we maintain in the wintertime to have them removed and installed with proper 1.5 meter wide sidewalks with the proper tactile plates where the sidewalk meets an intersection. So listed there in the accomplishments in 2019, you'll see what we had completed. 2020, we completed 5th Street. 2021, we completed Elizabeth Drive and Dundas. And 2022, Farlinger Park and Maud. That was just our last year's project. So in front of you, as I mentioned before, is a 5-year plan. 2023 is already set with the tender having been awarded. 2024 identified 2nd Street and 1st Street to have the sidewalks replaced along those 2 roadways. That was part of that 6-year plan that was created in 2019. So let's move forward. So what I was presenting, and again, we can move, change, edit as council feels fit with this. For 2025, we are aiming to go to Gilmer Road in Brinston and replace the sidewalks from County Road 16 right to the Matilda Park. On the north side, and then Gilmer Road, respectively, from County Road 16 to the church. That was a small little portion of sidewalk on the south side. In 2026, we're looking to do Beach Avenue in Iroquois from Island Park Drive to Elizabeth Drive, south side only. It's a grassy median on the north side. And then in Miller Street in Iroquois. That would be between Dundas and John Street on the west side, right by Ross Video. So then here we go with 2027, where we'd like to introduce a new asphalt pathway connecting Orchard Way to Meikle. There is presently a walking path there, and it's very challenging to maintain it in the wintertime with our sidewalk machine. And then a new asphalt pathway connecting Church Ave to Codwell Drive. Again, same kind of situation. It is a stone dust pathway that goes from Church Avenue in Iroquois up to the outdoor rink, and then connects Codwell. So those would be 2 great ideas for 2027. That would be minimal granular material needed. In Iroquois, we would have to excavate down a foot and a half, bring new material in as a base, subsurface, and then put an 5-foot asphalt pathway in connecting Orchard Way and Merkley Street. Some additional locations for your consideration would also be Laurier Avenue from 5th to Park. And a new asphalt or concrete pathway through Earl Baker Park from ultimately the Morrisburg Golf Course through Earl Baker Park, connecting to Sir James, to Farlinger, sorry. That would be on the south, it would be on the south side of Park Street, but the north side of the park, running parallel with Park Street. That would then complete a walking loop because 5th is already done. You could do 5th, Laurier, through the park, back to Farlinger. The buzzwords walk and fitness, so that would definitely complete that loop. It should be noted also that amendment that an amendment to bylaw 2021-05 winter maintenance sidewalks would needed to be completed to identify which sidewalks we are then going to winter maintain and or which ones we're going to leave stopped up and closed from November 1st to May 1st. So I can answer any questions which you may have at this time. Again, I'm at the discussion of council. If we'd like to switch, move, modify, or if I'm missing something, please let me know and we can incorporate it into the roadmap.
Thanks for your comments. So a couple of questions we'll start off with. So typically, what is the base problems with the ones we want to replace? Like what's the current status or condition of these that indicates that they're the ones we should replace?
So one, they're very old. We have, secondly, we have uneven panels. So there's heights differences between panels. And thirdly, they're 4 feet, which is kind of narrow when we start talking about accessibility. 1.5 meters wide is 5 feet. It's a nice walking surface. It will accept a wheelchair. And if somebody's pushing the wheelchair, or if even it's a one person wheelchair, they can traverse on the sidewalk with ease.
Cool. And then from a budget standpoint, were we, based on the distances and what it would take to rebuild these, were we aiming for a specific budget every year? Was that what your thought process, or?
Yeah, so through you, Mr. Mayor, yeah, we try to keep the budget amount that we have for 2023. I normally include 10%, plus or minus when I'm presenting it to council, and I try to stay within those dollar values. Roughly, it turns out to around 700 linear meters. So 700 times 5, you're looking at around 1,000 square meters of sidewalk to be removed, replaced, having new topsoil installed where need be, or if we have to add asphalt to driveways, that's all taken into that price consideration.
And what was our budget for 2023?
I don't have that number offhand.
Just putting it in perspective for
Yeah,
going forward or whatever. So, okay, very good. Questions or other questions from the council team? No. Councilor Vino, sure.
One was just for the consideration for that one through Park, because I think there is an old sidewalk or something that is on the south side, wasn't there, once upon a time?
Through which part?
Earl Baker. Yeah.
Yes.
Like there's a really old one.
there's an
Yeah.
old-
Just because with the Morrisburg Waterfront Committee that we are looking at ideas for that park as a whole and some different recreation ideas and whatnot. So just we should talk about that one at a later date, just because I think that could actually work. We could work that through some of the things that we're talking with the Waterfront Committee, and maybe we could use that pathway to help get people to and from some of the ideas that we have. That's just because I know that one was quite a ways away, but it was just something to think about for that one.
Yeah, I tend to agree with you, Councillor. You know, just being a golfer and a walker and whatnot, there is a lot of foot traffic from down Park Avenue to the park pathway. So it'd be nice to see that eventually that pathway
Yes.
get extended there. Question for you: is still the rule of thumb for driveways? You just go right through each driveway with the sidewalks. You don't leave the driveways and stop the sidewalk, or how do you?
So through you, Mayor Broad, if it looks like it resembles freshly laid asphalt in the driveway, then I'll make nice saw cuts and we'll tie the driveway or the sidewalks in tightly to the new driveway. Interlocking, same concept. If it looks like it's fresh interlock, then
Okay.
we'll butt them up. But if it's gravel or old looking asphalt, we're going right through.
Okay, good.
Councilor Smith.
I was just wondering, I walked a few of the sidewalks that are on the list last night, and what, is it just condition is the criteria, or is there anything else that factors in, like pedestrian traffic, like location, or is there, because some of the ones that were on the list, in my opinion, were still okay, I guess we'll say. Some, and there's other ones that could be like some, or there would be like sections of it that are horrible and there's sections of it that are okay. And so I was just wondering, like, for instance, like if it's like a main street, if it's near a shopping mall, if it's near a retirement home, if it's near a major business, if that factors in, or is it purely just condition?
It was, so again, through you, Mayor Broad, it was strictly the sidewalks that we maintain in the wintertime. With our sidewalk machine, it's 48 inches wide,
Okay,
so these sidewalks are 4 feet, we're creating sod damage.
Okay.
With the blades tearing, you know,
Okay.
being too wide for the sidewalk. That was our main intent, our main focus, was to get all our winter maintained sidewalks up to the proper 1.5 meters.
okay,
And then once we completed that project, then we were able to expand, like in 2027, then we're hitting new type of activities.
okay.
That was our main thinking behind it.
Yeah, so that really answers a good question that we're trying to execute to the winter sidewalk cleaning to have less damage, so we may have a sidewalk in poor condition, but not being maintained in the wintertime, so there is less traffic, and so that's our strategy at this point. And you've been working on that for a few years, obviously, for that, so that makes a whole lot of sense. Deputy Mayor? You were good? Yeah. you
You
agree?
answered my question, so in 2027, we're basically going to start fresh and replacing sidewalks that may not be maintained in the winter, but we need to upgrade them.
Well, right now, Orchard Way to Merkley, we do maintain that. It's grass.
Right.
It's a
Yeah,
grass.
understood.
Yeah, so
Understood.
we're gonna put a proper walking
Right.
surface in.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And Church Ave to Codwell, that's stone dust. So we're putting a proper,
Yeah, I really like for that
Walkers.
Iroquois too, it gets a lot of action too in the wintertime with the skating rink and all that, so that'll be good to have that connected through with the Iroquois Park and
Yeah.
the outdoor rink.
But essentially, by 2026, 2027, you've hit the sidewalks that you maintain, so everything moving forward is just basically new sidewalks
That
that
is
just
correct.
need to be replaced.
that's correct.
Yeah. What would be the typical lifespan of a sidewalk in our winter program? What would you think what would be the lifespan of
The new sidewalks?
a new site that we clean in the wintertime and salt? Hard to say at this point.
Hard to say
Hard at
with
this point.
salt, how does
Yeah.
it,
Yeah,
how does it degrade the sidewalk? I'm hoping for a long time.
right, right.
What about some of the sidewalks? I mean, I think there's some on Orchard Way, a patch of sidewalk that maybe utility or some laterals got replaced, but the sidewalk hasn't been replaced. When did they start getting replaced? Not Orchard Way, Broder. Sorry, I meant Broder.
Broder. Okay, so, through
And
Mayor
I'm
Broad-
only thinking that because that's the only one I can think of
Yeah.
right off the bat, but Broder.
So we normally reinstate, it was either a broken water main or broken
Mm-hmm.
sewer main, and they had to come out to the main from the house out. So we'll reinstate those. There's two, there's one on Lyons, that we'll just put an asphalt sidewalk back in, and same on Broder, we'll just put an asphalt sidewalk to,
And this year?
yes,
Okay, perfect. Okay,
Yeah.
gotcha. Okay,
yeah.
so you just try to do it either that year and it's the winter, it's the year after.
it was, yeah.
Yeah, I got you. Yeah, okay. Okay.
Yes, go ahead.
Are there any opportunities on, and I guess I'm thinking about, I guess it's Crookshank Way now, and places like that. I mean, when we're developing new subdivisions, Dutch Meadows, we're actually widening the asphalt and creating kind of a walking, what I would call kind of a not multi-pass, but a multi-use 5-foot section. Are there any opportunities to do that in our villages, or are we kind of confined now to no chance of widening them out?
So through your Mayor Broad, right now, we're in two scenarios. We either have roadway with a cement curb and then the sidewalks right where the cement curb is, or we have a roadway with a ditch, an open ditch line, and then the sidewalk is on the backside of the ditch line. So in order to, we'd
Yeah,
have
start
to
filling in
fill in
ditches
ditches
and
and,
Gotcha. One of the things that I always found, and it is what it is at this point, is Lakeshore Drive is a high-traffic bike, pedestrian walk, and when the counties redid it, they did it to, I would more or less say, a highway standard versus kind of a village interior standard. where the shoulder's only, this wide, and it's very difficult. Maybe in the near future, and I'm not saying it for this year, but maybe in the near future term, we can start looking at maybe, it appears that Lakeshore Drive has an opportunity to widen out the asphalt a little bit to make it more of a multi-purpose walking, cyclist friendly. I'd like to explore that again. I'm not asking you to do that in 2023 or anything, but maybe we can explore it in 2024, 2025 to see what kind of costs we'd be looking at to make that more of a pedestrian friendly road, because it's just right through, right from basically to where it connects to
To the
Iroquois
causeway.
right into town. There's a lot of foot traffic there, there's a lot of bike traffic there, and like you say, there's unfortunately the cars and the trucks don't slow down either as much as they should. So anyways, that's a side note, so maybe we could just put that as a note one day and maybe visit that and see
Yeah,
what kind
and I
of
think it
costs we
is,
would have.
yeah, go ahead, Director Hammond.
So as we move forward, great idea, Deputy Mayor St. Pierre. We also need to consider that when we start getting into areas like you referenced Broder Crescent, there's sidewalks on both sides of the road in Broder Crescent. Same with the old Codwell, Davies, pick one there. So at some point, we need to understand the fact that we only need a sidewalk on one side.
Yep.
Then we need to decide, is it the side with the fire hydrant, or is it the side with the street light? Normally, street light takes precedent, so whatever side the street light's on, that's the side that the sidewalk was on. Then we'd have to remove the opposite side, and if a person's pathway to their house comes off the sidewalk, then we're into leaving a portion of the sidewalk so that they could still make the transition. That's something that we're gonna have to, once we complete our winter maintenance sidewalks, that's definitely the type of activity that we're gonna be getting into.
Yeah, I guess that's a good example. Municipality removed the sidewalk on a High Street a few years ago. Because that disconnected the houses' sidewalks, steps from the sidewalk, so just creates a whole different dynamic, whatever, but it made sense, right, to not to maintain that specific sidewalk. Okay?
I'm just getting you your price here.
Yeah, that sounds good. I did have one more thing, but Councillor Ward?
I can wait for Jeff to.
So we budgeted, I believe, 200,000, and pricing been very competitive this year at 128,000. So that's just because of the cost of the concrete. So that's kind of where we normally budget
Yes.
around the 200,000.
Okay, yeah, so based on, you mentioned 10%, so for 24, 25, 26, we would typically see 200, 210, 220,
Yeah.
whatever, based on, in the budgeting. So that if we wanted to do more, we could just need to add more to that budget line. But those specific items basically add up to the 200,000 that you've listed in the plan, basically.
Estimation.
Estimation, of course. Councillor Ward?
So I guess I have two comments, and they're kind of part of maybe a bigger picture that I have in mind. So I hope council can bear with me through this. So I noticed that we're doing sidewalks on Gilmore Road in Princeton, and I know that that is home to a lot of recreational activity, that park, and I know they have a vision for that park, and I'm wondering if as part of the sidewalk replacement, we look at revitalizing that area, similarly to how we've spent some money on Iroquois and Morrisburg streetscaping. So I'm wondering if not only Gilmore Road and one of the ones that's not on here, County Road 18 and 31 in Williamsburg is not in your plan. I know that's probably part of a bigger vision as well, and we've had a conversation about that, but those are two that I would like to see a cost for, and maybe they're part of a bigger costing, but I'd still like to see what that would be, just because I think it's time we look at maybe putting a few dollars into those areas as well.
Director Hammond?
So through you, Mayor Broad, I was speaking today with Ben DeHaan, and Chief Engineer for SDG, and that topic did come up about County Road 1831 sidewalks. That is indeed a much bigger scope of work. One, we have to manage traffic. Two, we have to manage a narrow roadway. They all have accessible curbing up to a sidewalk. So that to me is a project where we'll need to have to enlist an engineer, maybe present us with some options, A, B, C, or whatever it may be. that will also support the vision of the counties, SDG, as well as how it will work within the municipality. So that, it's been there, we've definitely discussed it today, and we're gonna revisit it again, hopefully in the near future. And, but there's more work involved with that one than just rolling into like a small little Morrisburg Street or Iroquois Street, setting up and going at it.
Yeah, that's good to hear, and that's county, so that's something Mark and I can also follow up on and be part of a plan. But I definitely agree with nothing wrong. It's actually what we should be doing. Foreshadowing, looking ahead, creating a plan, getting pricing, and then know what the potentials are for Gilmore Road. So I know, Councillor Smith, you Williamsburg too was when you were there last night, right? You had some comments from some residents saying that there could be some opportunities there. So, yeah. Councillor Ward?
Ask
Yeah.
one more question,
You
Jeff?
may.
So when we look at expanding these sidewalks, specifically in the rural area, so going back to Brinston, that Gilmore Road's not a county road, so is the right-of-way, like, would we need to, do we have enough space to make a sidewalk bigger there, I guess is my question to you, or would we have to narrow the road to do that?
So through you, Mayor Broad, that road is overly wide as it is, as we speak right now. So in an instance like Gilmer Road, we would go from property line out towards the street. So we'd be extending it another half a foot. There is catch basins on the road, but when we approach a catch basin, we could always do a nice little horseshoe around the catch basin so that we're not moving underground infrastructure. It'll be close, but when I walked it there last week, there's room.
Councillor Smith?
Thank you, Mayor Broad. Just to follow up to Councillor Ward's question about 18 and 31, are we responsible for the sidewalks on those county roads?
Yes.
Yes, okay, I thought so. I just wanted to double check that. Okay.
But certainly we engaging with the counties, how it should be done, what we need to do, how we would do it, et cetera. Yeah. Excellent. So I think the direction for now, Director Hyman, is the plan is fine by us. So you can put those on the list to do. From a budget time, if we can find more money, do another sidewalk, that's what we'll execute. But I think the strategy of the winter maintenance sidewalks, number one, I think is very important. And I appreciate too that you've added, once you update these, we'll make sure the winter maintenance plan is updated at the same time for that. So excellent. Okay, moving on to item 5B, sidewalk machine options. Director Hyman.
So thank you, Mayor and Council. So this one, I had spoke earlier when we were doing the awarding of our winter snow plowing, that we did not receive any bids, submissions for sidewalk plowing. We maintain presently sidewalks in Morrisburg, sidewalks in Iroquois, and in the village of Williamsburg. So before you, as you know, the pricing was not there, so I've provided council with 4 options for your consideration and discussion. Option 1, or A, would be the purchase of 2 new sidewalk machines. This is not recommended, as this is a $200,000 plus purchase for just 1 machine. They're running upwards of 180 and higher. That's with the attachments, would be a blade, a blower, a broom, and a dump body to hold salt, and the salter. So option B would be enter into a lease agreement, winter lease agreement for 2 machines. Also, this isn't really the best moving forward. It would definitely help us to get through year 1 if we chose to, but we're seeing pricing, as I reached out to 2 local dealers in Ottawa, we're seeing pricing between $6,800 and $8,000 a month. That's from November 1st to May 1st, and then the machine is returned. So after your 3rd year, you're ultimately purchased a new sidewalk machine through the winter lease agreement. It would definitely help us get through year 1, but not ideal moving forward. Option C, purchase 2 gently used lease return units with under 600 hours. This would be definitely recommended by myself. In speaking again with local suppliers, one dealership in Ottawa had 5 units returned with under 600 hours. They offered a purchase price of $94,000 with 599 hours on it, plus it would need $6,000 for attachments. So in that $6,000, that would be for a used, least returned blade, a blower, dump body would be new, the salter on the back would be new, and a broom would be used. The second unit would be $105,000 for 473 hours. It would need $9,100 in attachments. Same attachments, it's the broom in the water tank is added into that price. I went to look at these units. They're very clean with minimal wear. The machine that we presently have right now came from the City of Ottawa as a lease return. And then the third option, option D, would be a retendering for pricing. Also not recommended, as the municipality, I feel, would receive prices that would be high, because people would know that we didn't receive pricing the first go-round, so they'd just be putting pricing in. So with options A, B, and C, staff would be required to operate these units. Staff suggests keeping the unit that we have, the unit that is due to be replaced next year for 2024, and keeping it in Iroquois. There's a sea container presently behind the keeping it in Williamsburg, sorry. There's a sea container behind the fire hall. We could then leave that unit there, and it would be all set. There'd be no float charges involved to clean the sidewalks in Williamsburg. Then the 2 new units that we bring in would do Iroquois and Morrisburg respectively, because there's a large amount of sidewalks in both of those towns. Staff are recommending issuing a tender for this. We're not at deadline right now. However, if we do sit on it, there is the potential of either these leased return units disappearing, or I don't know what could happen. So, if we were to do something by July, August, I believe we're still in lots of time. So $180,000 was budgeted for the replacement of our trackless machine that we presently own. If we were to keep that, we would have the $180,000 for the 2 leased purchases. The cost that we spend each year for snowplow clearing through contracts is $35,000. So that monies would also be used against the purchase of 2 gently used machines. So we just about have the costs covered for two units if council chose to go that route. I have attached maps of the Williamsburg, Iroquois, and Morrisburg sidewalks that we presently plow at this time. I can answer any questions which you may have.
Thanks, Dr. Hammond. Councillor Smith.
Just, the first thing I thought of was, okay, are we going to have to hire extra staff?
Yes.
Okay.
We'll have to hire 2 staff to plow, to operate those machines.
Okay.
Councillor Vino.
Just 2 questions for you, Mayor. One, what's the life expectancy of these? So if 600 hours and 473 hours, the new one's $200,000. These ones are going to be a little better than 50% of the cost. What's the life expectancy for one of these machines?
So through you, Mayor Broad, so these machines are used in the wintertime, obviously, and then we do intersection sweeping, and then once we're done the intersection sweeping, these machines are cleaned inside and out, and they're parked. So they're ultimately not used in the summertime. We might sweep the pathways in Morrisburg and Iroquois maybe once through the summer or twice through the summer. So very minimal use. So I believe the longevity of these machines could be in the 10 to 12 years or longer, depending on proper maintenance.
So the machine that we were looking at replacing next year, that we budgeted 180 for, the current one, what's the hours on it, and what was the, you might not know that offhand, so apologize, but what was the reasoning for replacing it? I'm just curious, again, about the longevity of those used units.
So it was being placed because of the year factor. It's 10 years in excess, and then for our equipment, we were using 10 years as the number.
Okay.
So that's why. We're starting to see minor repairs that are needed on it, but with the minimal use of it being only in Williamsburg, we could definitely stretch that machine out again for the life of it.
Okay, and just one more would just be this, the $35,000 that we spend on sidewalk operations. I mean, we're still going to be spending on sidewalk operations if we're operating the equipment, right? Like with employees and whatnot, so, I mean, we'll save some money there, I think, just because we're not for profit, but, just for council's perspective, I don't know if the 35,000 will go directly against the purchase price, but there definitely will be savings from not going out to third party. I think that's all I have.
Yeah, the savings was the total savings of last year's contract
That's
for snow removal. So we're gonna spend that 35 in purchasing and staffing. So it's not a complete upper, it's only it could be savings, it could be an upper based on the difference between the two.
And the benefits with having our own staff in them is that when the phone call's made, the machine is out. We know it's out, it's operating, it's doing what it's supposed to be doing. Sometimes we had to wait on contractors to come in because they were elsewhere. It's just when it's go time, we know it's my staff that's in the machines operating them.
Councilor Vito?
The staff that we would hire for these 3 machines, is that part-time staff? They're just winter,
Just winter seasonal.
seasonal time?
Yes.
Okay.
Other questions, Councilor Ward?
These gently used ones are, just so I have a compare. Do you know? I know you have the hour count, so I apologize. I just was wondering if you knew the age.
It did not include an age on the quote. It just said used, it would be within 5 years.
Within 5, okay. So they would have 5 more years of useful life if we go based on,
Well, if they put 599 hours on in 5 years, that's only 100 hours a year that they put on. So not really a lot when you look at the big picture of hours and usage. So we could definitely, we easily see 10 years out of them.
10 on top of the 5?
Correct.
So 15 years?
Correct.
Okay.
Just a quick question through you, Mayor Broad. Is there an insurance hit on this as well? Because now we're expanding our own sidewalk.
They would be added to the
Do you have
fleet
a-
insurance.
Do you have a rough, I guess it's an overall, right? It's all blended in? Because I know that snow clearing cost insurance is quite expensive.
Clerk LeBrun?
So we have a blanket policy. So the rate is based on the total amount of equipment we have and not necessarily broken down line by line. But we'll probably have to take on a little bit of liability for those sidewalks. But to add them to the equipment rider, let's just say, I don't think it shouldn't have a huge impact, but.
And I think that's why we're seeing less and less snow clearing companies, because the insurance to provide that service is quite expensive. So I'm just trying to, that expense is still going to be our expense, I would imagine.
So, through you, Mayor Broad, I believe that because we are already doing snow removal on sidewalks and we're already doing that snow clearing, we're already paying for
Covered.
that risk.
Okay, so it shouldn't be additional cost. just
I don't
by
foresee
adding.
it being,
We become sole liable versus 2 people.
Yeah, no, understood, yeah, okay.
Councilor Vito?
Just a follow-up question on that so I can understand it. Because I know whenever we do our sidewalk or our parking lot tenders and everything, we can get more quotes because those contractors don't need to salt. We take on the liability of the salt for the parking lots. Whenever we put out the sidewalk tenders, historically, have those contractors had to have insurance because they were the ones salting it? So presumably then, with us salting it, to your point, I would expect our premium to go up because we were originally those sidewalks, the sole liability was then on the contractor, right?
so, through you, Mayor Broad, maybe that's something we can get that information
Yeah.
directly from the insurance company and bring it back at the next report. Yeah.
The ironic point we don't have a contractor willing to do the work. Yeah, no, all good questions for sure. We need to understand the final cost, but,
And to you, Mayor Broad, and through you, I think I'd like to see that. I'm not saying yea or nay to this, but I think I'd like to see all the line items get what is the true value we're looking at again. I mean, we want to do snow clearing for sidewalks. It's just nice to have all of the information if we could, just to have it in hand so we can make a good rational decision on it.
Councilor Ward?
Jeff's done all of this, but just maybe, when I look at the lease option, if we do it over the 50, say we just leased equipment for 15 years, right? Like we go through that without inflation, right? Because I'm sure there will be inflation in there. We're looking at 510,000 to 600,000, depending on which model we go with or whatever, the 8,000 versus the lower cost. So that to me is no, especially since a new model costs 200,000. So when we do the 200,000 over the 15 years, which we would actually be spending 400,000 because we need two, that's about like $26,000 a year if you break it out per year. And then if you do the used equipment and we get another 10 years out, that's $21,000 a year. So ultimately, Jeff's suggestion is our cheapest. We're gonna have to pay for insurance on all the options regardless. So I think, in my opinion, I'm comfortable with Jeff's suggestion. My only hesitation is, and I'm sure Mr. Heineman is aware, sorry Jeff, I've been calling you Jeff, is aware that sometimes we buy used equipment and it comes back to bite us, and then we end up buying new or leasing, and used equipment makes me nervous. There's a reason why it was probably returned. Especially if it's municipal, sometimes you know where I'm going with this. So that's my only hesitation, but if council's comfortable with it, then I'm also comfortable with it. So he did say that he went to see them, so.
Councilor Eno?
So it was a lease return, right? So that would be the reason to give it back. And I guess our current machine was a lease return, the current trackless. So we could look at its maintenance history and see how we fared out on it, if that's some information the council would like to see, because that would give us a good comparison of what we could expect to be. And just my final comment was I can appreciate, because of the business I'm in, whenever Director Hyman mentioned about timing for this, I mean, if we're looking at these machines, other municipalities, chances are looking at these machines. I'm not saying we need to make a decision tonight, but I'm saying that it's probably something that we don't want to hold off on too long, and so I just want to stress that point.
I'll ask the question. I assume that Director Hyman is just looking for us to say, get the tender out so that we can approve if we're fine with it in a future council meeting, we can approve the purchase of them.
Yeah, so
that would
through
be
the
ideal.
mayor, what I'm looking for is
Yeah,
which route do we want to go?
yeah.
If we want to go new, then I'll get a tender ready for new. If we want to go used, then I'll get the tender ready for gently used.
Yeah.
The good thing is, in referencing what Councilor Vino just stated, I did go and look at these machines. The company that I went to, open door policy. She told me, the sales lady told me, if you want to bring your mechanic back, have a look at them, by all means. So that's a comfort level on my side. It's not like we're buying a machine from Western Ontario where we'd have to make a special trip to go look at them. They're right here. They're within 35, 40 minutes of our doorstep for two reputable companies. Again, we're not trying to discourage other companies from applying with the tender document, but just in speaking with the two that I spoke with, they're right there. So,
Councilor Ward?
Own that that's an option, then I'm much more comfortable with the used. So I'm ready to make a decision to give direction tonight, but I'll let the rest of council.
Certainly, I don't want to delay it.
Yeah.
That's all I'm suggesting is when you come back with it, if you could just kind of get all the costs combined so we get a good full picture, that's the only thing I'm really asking for,
Yep. Yeah, Councilor Smith?
So their question that I had was just, how much more equipment can we have? How much more can our mechanic handle? because we're gonna be adding 2 more used pieces of equipment that our mechanic is gonna have to chase in the winter for breakdowns. And so, you know, the day that the snowplow breakdown is the day that the sidewalk machine's gonna break down. And so so how much more equipment can we handle?
So through you, Mayor Broad, you're giving me bad news. You know.
I'm just trying to think of
He,
everything.
he feels confident. He likes the idea that we can go and inspect the machine, that we can
Okay.
see the machines. We could go in tomorrow and look at them, knock on their door, they'll show us. They're not hiding anything. Nobody would in the Ottawa area, because word gets around, right? Both of these locals, they supply to the city of Ottawa, so we're trying to do the right, but in speaking with my mechanic, he feels very confident that he can maintain them.
And it's not, like, I mean, we would have 3, so if all of a sudden one does break down, like, we can float one from one to
That's
another to,
correct.
yeah, so it's, yeah. But just everything with wheels and the motor breaks down, and we only have one mechanic, and I was just curious, like, how that's gonna work, how busy is he?
No, that's correct. We do have flexibility now with having 3 machines. If one did go down for a short period of time, then we could definitely utilize 2 and still accomplish the same goal.
Yeah, yeah.
Councilor Ward?
Sorry, one more question. It doesn't change my decision, but I just am wondering, Jeff, when we would tender for this, would we include a maintenance period in it? Since
We could
it's-
definitely include, sure.
see if it's worthwhile. I don't know if they would offer it depending on the hour, but I'm just curious if that's an option we would consider. That way, maybe it alleviates some of that extra. Obviously, we would eventually want to maintain it ourselves, but just if there's a 1-year maintenance included, great. If not, that's.
Okay. All right, so I think we'll look at the councilors. We prefer C on the semi-used side, so I think you could go ahead, Director Hyman, and get those tenders out, and then hopefully at the June meeting, it's our next council meeting, you could have that back if that's not quick enough, or the July one, whatever is
Maybe
the
the
fastest you
July
can-
one.
Maybe the July one, and then make sure we include, at that time, please include any subsidiary costs, so we know, and B, the staffing request, so we can approve it for those 2 extra part-time workers. And we'll have it all as one package.
I could do that.
We can do that. Okay. All right, excellent. Appreciate all the work, Director Hyman, you've been putting in for our sidewalks, building them and cleaning them of snow. Okay, we'll move on to 5C. A meeting or so ago, a notion of motion, I had asked that we review our property standards, have a property standard discussion. So tonight is about learning the bylaw. As it's that time of year, we do have some complaints that have come in. So if there's any future execution that we need to do on a standard, we will have the full knowledge. So Andrew is here tonight. Thank you for joining us to just review the bylaw and then answer. And it may lead into some other questions around some of the bylaws, but just tell us where we're at and where we need to go from there. So I'll let you start.
Okay, thank you very much. Just maybe a quick brief history.
Yes.
In the past, we had a yard cleanup bylaw in Morrisburg and Iroquois only. The rural areas were covered by the province. I'm not sure the specific date, but a while back the province said no more. You have to take care of your own municipality. And we were forced with every other municipality to enact a property standards bylaw. We have done that. The property standards bylaw is covered through my Building Code Act, and everything that we do through property standards is through the Building Code Act, which highlights somewhat of the process that needs to be taken to enforce this bylaw that we have created. So that being said, at this point, of course, it is spring. We go from very few property standards complaints to a lot, virtually overnight. We are presently pursuing a reactive stance with property standards complaints. Is if someone takes the time to fill out a complaint form, we act on it and follow through our process. We also do some proactive property standards, but that is not as extreme as the reactive stuff. So that's kind of the two avenues that we're pursuing at this time. The basic process is from reactive, somebody gives us a complaint. We go and do an inspection of the site to see if the complaint actually fits within our bylaw. And if so, and there is a violation, we notify the complainant that we have found a violation that we will be pursuing that. And then we also notify the person in violation that they need to make corrective action to that bylaw infraction that we've highlighted by specifying a specific amount of time, which is stated in the Building Code Act, and pursue, hopefully, to a mutual agreement where a cleanup or a repair gets done in a orderly fashion. And that would be if everything goes well. Unfortunately, in general, with property standards, it's difficult to keep council happy, to keep the person complained happy, and the person that's in violation happy. So it's a very challenging bylaw to work with. Some of the interesting things with this bylaw that makes it even more challenging is some of the stuff has to do with yards, garbage, grass cutting, that sort of stuff, which is pretty straightforward, cut and dry. Where it starts to get difficult is our bylaw currently has issues with people's homes, the paint of the house, the windows, the doors, the roof comes into play. That, of course, then affects individuals who are renting, and those people renting put in property standards complaints because they're not happy with doors, windows, roofs, leaks, etc.
So the renter actually puts in a complaint against the landlord.
Yes, we get
Okay,
quite
really?
a few of
Interesting.
those.
Okay.
And then that becomes a bit of a challenge because we, I believe, do not wish to be in the business of providing evidence for a tenant to go to the rental tribunal board, which is the provincial level above us, who has also more power to make repairs and etc. What happens is, though, there's a substantial fee, I believe it's up to $175 now, for someone to complain to the rental tribunal board, and they're backlogged literally years at this point. So we get a lot of people, because our complaint system's free, and they are looking for us through our property standards to help them get their home the way they feel it's necessary. Just a quick overview.
Right, that's very interesting about the rent. So based on this year's complaints, putting aside maybe the landlord piece and the renter, because that's kind of a unique one, obviously. How many or what type of, on the yard and the grass cutting, what's the sense right now on the property standards complaints we're seeing?
Historically, you're probably looking, like the yard stuff, the garbage, the long grass, the mess in the yard, you're probably looking like 60% of our property standards are those, and then the other ones fall in behind. But the majority of stuff is long grass, garbage, stuff that's usually not too difficult to take care of.
Councilor Ward.
May I ask, so section 30 speaks about property standards committee, and I think I asked about this during when we were assigned to committee. I don't know, can you explain to me who's on that committee, how that committee works?
At present, we do not have a property standards committee.
So we have it in our bylaw
Yeah, so we nominated ourselves.
to be that?
be that,
committee? Okay,
yeah.
so we're all on that committee?
We're all on that committee, correct. Yeah, so we did not
Is that fair?
appoint at large anybody. We appointed ourselves,
Okay.
which is
So we do have a committee itself.
correct. So if
But
there
did-
was,
Yes.
correct. Yeah.
I remember we discussed it, but did we get, is it an appointed committee? Like through bylaw?
The option to go out and get committee members or appoint ourselves, and we opted to appoint ourselves,
Okay, sorry.
from what I remember.
Correct, that's
Okay.
correct.
And if I may, that committee is only if someone disputes what we're asking them, well, specifically our department asking them to do. They can come to the committee and say, no, I do not believe that this cleanup, repair, or whatever is warranted, and they would go to you folks in that regard.
Based on that, it falls under the building code in your department. And we haven't seen it yet, but do you ever have to come to us? Is there any part of the bylaw that you have to come to the committee to execute anything?
Not from my standpoint, because the
Right.
committee is primarily when somebody disputes what we're asking. What I would like to ask this evening of you folks and the committee per se is, I'd like to have some kind of financial limit for what I can spend on a cleanup or a repair before I have to come to council with a presentation, et cetera. So that would be something for discussion this evening. Based on our past history, if it was somewhere in the neighborhood of like $2,000 or $2,500 that I could spend without coming to see you to clean up a yard when someone's in violation and refuses to do so, that would be the sort of thing that we would do. Anything above that, I would obviously speak to Tim and proceed that way.
Deputy Mayor?
So through you, so then what happens after that? Do we charge back through our taxes? Or
Yes.
give them an invoice, or?
Yes.
So can you kind of walk me slowly through that process then of when you give a notification to a property owner of a cleanup, exactly what are the next steps? What are the timelines? Are there appeals? Can you kind of just maybe walk me
We
through that,
initially
please?
said it was referred to as an order to remedy.
Yeah.
And then within that order to remedy, we specify a time frame. The Building Code Act sets about 15 days for them to be notified, and then we can pick, based on the type of violation, how much time we will allow them to do a cleanup. So historically, if someone has 20 bags of garbage in their back porch, we're going to give them very limited time, maybe a week, to get that complete. So to follow that through, if that person does not make that cleanup within a week, then we would get an estimate from a contractor to do that cleanup, okay? And once that cleanup number's been given, if the person in violation does not come to the committee for an adjustment or an extension, then we would proceed with that cleanup. We would then pay the contractor involved. And then the Building Code Act allows us to take the contractor's fees and cost and our cost and put it against the taxes for the property. So we will eventually recover that money, but it would have to be an outlay initially when it first happens.
And then what happens if 2 or 3 years later, there's another violation on the same property?
Same thing.
It's just the same process?
Yes,
Okay.
Through Mayor Broad. We have, to use a polite term, frequent flyers that we deal with on a regular basis and literally see them or talk to them every spring, every summer, sometimes twice a year.
Sorry.
Yep.
Now, walk me through cases where it's not just garbage, it's drums of oil, drums of gas, old cars with gas tanks full of fuel.
Through Mayor Broad, it's the same process, only it involves more costs. And for, if it's drums of oil, et cetera, I would more than likely contact the Ministry of Environment, or if it have to do with sewage or something, I'd contact the South Nation regarding the health unit stuff. So we have that power to bring in other agencies if it's something beyond bags of garbage or that sort of thing.
And do we have any, so we've got a number of ongoing cases that are in violation, you don't have to tell me
Yes.
who, but you've got a
Oh,
number
yeah.
of them.
Yes. Our current bylaw officer and ourselves were very popular with that stuff at this time.
And again, sorry, Andrew, you were kind of mentioning earlier, I was just right, are we being proactive or reactive?
Both.
Okay.
But,
And- and
if you
you-
were to do a percentage, we're probably doing 90% reactive and 10% proactive.
Okay. And what would be the process of asking the bylaw to be more proactive and having that percentage higher? Is that something that's come through the committee, or is that something you develop on your own?
Through Mayor Broad, that would be something we can do. It's just a matter of us seeing a violation, and then we are stepping in and providing the complaint, basically, is what's happening. We're providing our own complaint when we're being proactive. We are, in several cases, we do that on a regular basis, but what I'd like to sort of explain and express is, based on how much stuff is in here, we literally could look out the window right now, and I could probably spot you 3 or 4 violations by using this right now. So the idea of being completely proactive is going to overwhelm us, and will overwhelm you, and I believe will also overwhelm the general public, because then we start to become heavy-handed. And through the court stuff, if we end up in court over a property standards issue that we have instigated as the complainant, historically, we'll end up not in a winning side in that per side. Usually, to be as play as possible, a judge is going to favor the single person rather than the government and municipality. But when we're being reactive, we can go to court and say to a judge, well, it's not us being Big Brother. We are following a complaint by a neighbor that's looking to get this cleaned up. And then that's looked upon more in a positive light, that it's not just us knocking on doors.
Peter?
And when you, sorry, I don't mean to monopolize it. And when you talk about neighbors, is it a direct neighbor, or anybody within the municipality can put in a complaint?
Anybody within the municipality can put in a complaint. The majority of them are direct neighbors, but anybody can within the municipality.
And does the property owners know who put the complaints in?
No,
Or is that-
not initially. That's considered confidential under that arrangement, unless it ends up in provincial court. And then, because of the full disclosure requirements, then we would have to provide the name of the person who provided the complaint.
I feel like you're on trial here a little bit. I apologize.
That's okay.
Does the committee get a list of the violations that you're dealing with? Because I'm going to be honest with you, I mean, we're the ones who hear it on the street all the time.
Correct.
And I'm just wondering if that's a helpful tool to say yes or no that it's being dealt with or not. Like, what would be your I mean, I don't think it takes much to go around South Dundas and figure out where the true violations occur. But when people come up to us, I mean, what's our reaction supposed to be? Hey, go put a complaint in, or?
Through Mayor Broad, yes, please. If someone approaches you and says, I have an issue with such and such, I would ask you folks to ask them to give us a complaint so that we can do the investigation to see if it actually even fits the bylaw.
Can the committee put the complaint in? Or request that you investigate to see if there's a violation?
To me, my first thought is you're kind of treading on legal grounds here, because you've enacted yourself to be the committee to make a ruling on a specific issue. But if you created the complaint, then you're really not looking at it according to the building code in a clear, focused light. It's basically, you're the ones that are brought in.
And does the formal formwork have to be completed for you to, if somebody sends you an email, somebody talks to you and says, hey, property X, would you just go out and take a look at it? Or do they have to fill in the proper paperwork?
We definitely push to have the complaint form filled out properly and signed. That way, we are also able to tell the person who is complaining, okay, here's a letter indicating that, yes, we are in process looking at this particular request, this particular complaint. And then that's where we leave it. Because after that, we're dealing with the person who may or not be in violation, and the complainant is not privy to that information going forward.
Okay, that's good for me for now.
Councillor Ward, did Deputy Mayor ask all your questions, or?
Well, I have a few
Sure.
additional
of
questions.
course.
So, I'm glad that Andrew brought up, I do think that our bylaw is very thick, full of material that I've not seen before in other municipalities, where it has quite a bit of content. Like, for example, there's a section about lighting, and I can honestly say I don't think I've ever seen that before. One thing you did mention that I have a question about is, you did mention the last council you came to for 2,000 to 2,500 in property cleanup.
Yes.
But the bylaw says 20,000. So I just want to make sure whatever we decide as a council, that it's reflected in here. So I'll just find the section here. It's in section 27 under enforcement. So it says a property standards officer is hereby authorized to blah, blah, blah. Clearing of all buildings where the cost of doing the work does not exceed 20,000. If the cost of doing the work exceeds 20,000, this chief building official shall seek authorization from council. So right now it's at 20,000.
Yes, through the mayor. That is what was in the bylaw. We were instructed by the previous council that any monies that we were to spend was to go to them regardless of what it said in the bylaw. So that's why I'm looking for just a bit of an idea if we can do that. The second thing would be, personally and professionally, I'd be uncomfortable spending $15,000, $18,000, $20,000 of taxpayers' money without coming to council to at least review and discuss what we're going to be doing. Because if I start spending that kind of money, there's going to be some really upset people.
So I think my suggestion would be then, Mayor, that we revise that
Yeah,
section
we
to
can-
be an appropriate amount based on whatever
Sure.
Mr. Turner thinks should be. Just because I'd hate for our bylaw to say one thing and us be doing something else, because that doesn't really make sense to me.
Yeah, no, our bylaw should state exactly what we want. And we could have staff bring forward a proposal,
And-
future council meeting, of what that limit should be, or.
And to my point about the density, I called it thick, but that's not the right word, but the amount of material in here, I don't know if it's wise, if Mr. Turner could come back with the sections he thinks that are covered through the building code. Because I assume as a chief building official, you have some authority, if a building's falling down, you can enter it and deem it unsafe, correct?
Correct.
So you have that authority through the building code. Does it really need to be in the property standards bylaws, I guess my question? Because maybe that'll
Through the
mitigate.
mayor. The bylaw, as it's been created, was actually researched, and I was part of the individuals that put this together. It's actually very similar to most municipalities now and most cities. So it's, although very extensive, it's not going to be any more extensive than just about anybody else in the area at this time.
I guess my question is, I just heard from you that you're getting a lot of complaints because there's a lot of ability for people to make complaints. So I just wasn't sure if you were asking us if you could cut it down, or if, like, that's where I guess I was going with that comment. Like, if it needs to be.
I'm not specific, I'm fine with the bylaw.
Okay.
I'm not looking to cut the bylaw down
Okay.
at this stage.
Okay.
Basically, my ask was this evening was have just a bit of an amount so I could do some garbage cleanup, which is literally do now. Garbage
You can-
cleanup, deck repairs, that sort of thing, minor stuff.
Right, and I can see through why we're at this point, as depending on the eyes you look through. You know, if you're a neighbor several houses down, you see some garbage, that's, you know, you don't like that, versus you're the tenant and you don't have any lights in your walkway. You can see why it grows into many more things that you may look at or have complaints about, right? So certainly, I can understand why it becomes so big in that manner. Councillor Smith?
For you, Mr. Mayor, the question you had, or the question I had was, you said that if we saw that there was an issue and then you would call a contractor to come give a quote for like a yard cleanup or something like that. Does it have to be a contractor that does it, or could we do it and just assign a dollar figure to it? Does it have to be a quote from a contractor? Does it have to be a third party?
At this stage, it could be either. If it was something, a very small amount, a few bags of garbage, we had a bathtub on Victoria Street the other day, that sort of thing, we could use our own forces.
Okay.
If you folks were satisfied with that for something small.
Okay.
We often get into repairs, you know, carpentry repairs, foundation repairs, or larger cleanups is where we would involve a subcontractor, some
Okay.
regard.
Okay.
We've had in the recent past yard cleanup, which involved me, our bylaw officer, 2 police officers, 1 40-yard dumpster and 1 20-yard dumpster. And about 8 hours, and it was subcontractor brought 4 men, plus myself, plus bylaw, 6 and 2 police officers. It was like 8 people there at that time.
Okay.
So they can go from, yeah, sure, we can pick up a bathtub on the way out the road,
Yeah.
or it's going to be too big of a scope of work for our forces. Because once we start getting into those larger cleanups, then I have to start looking at situations where we're dealing with garbage. All the people that are attending possibly will have to wear a mask or a hazmat suit. Definitely would have to have like needle-proof gloves, that sort of thing, as part of a massive or a larger cleanup, to make sure that the cleanup is safe for everybody at the same time.
Okay.
And
All right, and another question I had was, with dealing with tenants versus landlords, how would it work, say, somebody the owner of the building is in another part of the province, another country, like how does that work? Like all of a sudden they just find out they get a bill and they didn't know anything about, how does that work?
The process through the building code is when we notify someone that we have a violation and we require the owner to do a cleanup, we're required to send them registered mail, that
Okay.
order.
Okay.
And then that's put in place.
Okay.
A lot of times we'll also, basically email, if we have the ability to email that owner the order as well.
Okay, so it's not just a notice on the front door? or-
No, that is
okay.
correct. We try to contact them.
Okay.
We work very hard to try and get compliance without battles, without pushing it to court, without fighting and arguing, et cetera. So we're always trying to work towards compliance with people. We'll grant extensions if they're making an effort to help.
Okay.
That being said, if we have a frequent flyer with buildings that are being rented, we're trying to get some compliance, but at some point, there's just going to be, okay, well, we're going to have to hit you hard and fast and
Yeah.
get it done, or we're going to have to do it.
Okay.
Once again, when we get to that stage, the idea being, I don't believe council or the constituents wants our municipality to become a maintenance organization to repair homes, yards, et cetera. So that's always a bit of a fine line. We're trying to push an owner to comply as best we possibly can, because at the same time, I don't want to be coming to council every meeting and saying, I got 4 or 5 cleanups here, and ranging from $5,000 to $20,000 a pop. So we're always trying to push for some compliance. And as we push for compliance, the person who's in violations often, well, you guys are being hard on me, I need more time. But then the complainant's emailing us, nothing's happening. You're not doing enough. So we're always trying to tread down the middle best we possibly can. And unfortunately, like I said when I started, rarely are we going to have a happy person in violation and a happy person that's complaining.
Deputy Mayor?
Through you, and I agree with you. I don't think the municipality wants to become a maintenance property standards, but Andrew, you know, I gotta be quite frank. I mean, there are properties around our municipality that's been a junkyard for many years and too many years.
I
And
would
they're,
agree.
and you know that, and you agree with that, and they're the ones that really need to be cleaned up,
Okay.
and I don't know, I mean, it was somehow, some way, we've got to get past this and get them cleaned up, and I think by hitting the larger ones that we know of and getting them to clean it up, whether we to get in there and do it ourselves, and it does cost us $20,000 and we have to back charge them, I think that's a message that we should be sending to all property owners. And again, I'm not talking about the individual with, you know, a broken fence or some long grass that maybe they don't cut every week. You know the ones I'm talking about. The
Oh,
ones
yes,
that-
sir.
The old skidoos and the cars and the barrels and the tractors and the junk and that just piled up. I mean, it's just not right. It's just not right. And we need to get these properties cleaned up, and I think we need to be aggressive in cleaning these properties up. You know, and I don't want to debate it too much. I tend to disagree when I hear that our taxpayers don't want to spend the money. Our taxpayers are the ones who are complaining to us about these properties. I think they want it cleaned up as well.
Okay.
And as long as we've got a mechanism in place to recoup that money somehow, some way, I'm not speaking on behalf of the committee here. I'm speaking on behalf of myself and and people I listen to. They want it cleaned up. You know, so I've got no issue with the $20,000, to be honest with you. I got no issue with, I think it's kind of odd that a council or a committee would say you have to come to us to get permission to spend a couple $1,000s to clean it up. I think that's odd. I mean, we have a bylaw, exercise the bylaw. Let's not pick on the people again. You know the ones that we're talking about. Let's not pick on every little property owner. If you clean up the big ones, everybody else will start getting the message. And I'm not talking about structures, I'm talking about yard stuff here. You
Okay.
know. That's my opinion. I just felt I needed to say it. You know.
Councillor Ward?
I echo everything the deputy mayor just said, actually, so thank you. I also have the same concern as he does. I think 20,000 is probably enough. Like, I personally don't think I need to see every single property and how much it's gonna cost. If it's 20,000 and over, then, you know, maybe that's a little bit different. So I agree with the deputy mayor, and, you know, some of these properties too, I have concerns, and maybe they don't understand, but when you have old cars and oil barrels and your drinking water well is right there, and you have people living in your house and you have people living next door and their well's right there, I can understand that's somebody's livelihood. You buy a piece of property too and you want to be able to enjoy it. So I'm on the same page as the deputy mayor, and I would support that as well.
Any other comments? I'll take the closing comment.
I'm going to take what you said, and you'd hate to spend up to $20,000 without our direction. I'd almost agree. 20 is enough. I don't know. I'd like to see a lower dollar figure. I don't know. Like, honestly, I was thinking 5, but I don't know. That's what I was thinking. But
Sure, I think direction we kind of gave a little bit earlier was like, they can have a thought process on it and kind of feel those
like,
out.
certainly not for everything. But I mean, if there's like a large yard cleanup with several people, and it's going to be like there's going to be a big bill. I was kind of thinking 5, but that was my thoughts.
Councillor Vino?
I guess just my question there would be, so the process of, you tack it onto the tax bill, right? And when does that, I just don't understand that process very well, like on how the tax ends up, like when would the municipality see that money again? Is it when the property would change hands at some point, they would owe that tax?
Well, they owe it immediately.
And then that puts them in arrears?
From experience, it sort of depends on the situation and the specific piece of property. We could have instances where we put X number of dollars on a piece of property and we may not ever get it back. If someone has an active mortgage and we put the bill to them and it's not paid, then that's more than likely to get paid by the mortgage company, and we get paid back through that. So, and then of course, with maybe even larger cleanups, I'm not sure if, we get anything back immediately or ever. If someone owns their property, doesn't have a mortgage, and we send them a $15,000 bill and they don't pay it, we may not have a whole heck of a leg to stand on until it starts to become now they're back on not paying their property taxes in full, and then we start going down that road where we're going to take the property in lieu of the fact they haven't paid their taxes in full. And that's a process that takes, I believe, 3 years as a minimum before we can take that property. And then when we do take that property, then we turn around and attempt to sell it to recoup our tax dollars that way. So it becomes a much longer process.
Okay.
Okay,
I don't think that's much of an alternative, to be honest with you.
okay. Yes,
I'd just like to say,
Keep
I
going,
have
sir.
no difficulty pursuing anything in that regard. I'm not here saying, no, we don't want to do stuff. I'm happy to pursue it. As long as everyone's on board that when I start pursuing this, there is going to be some individuals that are not going to be very happy, and they are going to be calling you folks. And if I'm doing enforcement, that's fine. I can do enforcement. That's good. I'm
Yeah, I
good
think-
with that.
I think I'll just take the final statement. Certainly brought it forward in the first place. Hey, I wanted to learn more and get us all trained and have us a chance to ask questions about it, get a better understanding as people talk to us about it, because we do get a lot of conversation about it within the community, within our residents. I feel like a lot of people spend a lot of great time and effort keeping their properties wonderful. A lot of people keep it average, which is great. We want to talk about how great South Dundas is, and I also feel like, if there's some properties we should, clean up and or be actively working on, then we should do that. And I'm supportive of your work and the bylaw we have on that. So I'll leave it at that, and I think you got a little bit of direction tonight, and if we want to consider, you guys staff can review, take a look at the bylaw. If there's a limit you would prefer us to have versus the 20,000, you could bring that back, or we could leave it at that, but we'll leave it up to staff to have a conversation about it, which makes you feel the most comfortable in your position. But kind of knowing that, we certainly are supportive of executing the work, knowing that it does go onto the taxes, so it's not outright on the taxpayer, but obviously collection does become a situation over the long haul, maybe on a specific property. So with that being said, Chief Building Officer Andrew Turner, thank you for being here tonight and sharing the bylaw with us and answering our questions. And
Thank you very much for your time.
thank you. Okay, with that, it concludes the evening, our Committee of the Whole for Wednesday, May 31st. I have a motion that the council now adjourn and meet at the call of the chair. Motion by Councillor Smith, seconded by Councillor Vino. All in favor? Carried. Okay, so for Wednesday, May the 31st, 2023, thanks everybody for tuning in online or watching us recording, and thanks for staff for being here preparing the agenda, and for our two presenters, Chief Building Officer Andrew Turner and our Director of Roads, Jeff Hyman. Thank you for tonight. Have a good night.